You got it?
Yep.
Oops.
So in the recounting of the materials that were donated for the Mishkan in this week's Parsha, the Torah emphasizes that all of the items were given voluntarily. Shared the Davol Libo, that his heart brought him to, or her, to donate either the materials themselves or the skills that were necessary to build the Mishkan. The Farshim point out there are different areas, and today we know what the medical science has taught us, that for instance, there are different areas of the brain that control different emotions that a person has. We are divided into different parts, even though that when Baruch Hashem, everything is in order, so then there is a unity and we're not aware of it. But sometimes if something goes wrong, God forbid, so it's located in a certain place. The Gemara teaches us that the nature of people is not to be generous. The intellect of people, the das, the chokhmah, is what the Mishnah says in Ovos, shali, shali, v'shalcha, shalcha. That's the midah beinanis. That's the regular midah. Some say that's midah stone, because if we operate only with the regular, it ends up as stone. But anyway, but that's the regular midah, the ordinary midah. I have my problems, you have yours. I have enough problems, I don't need yours. I don't have to give away what's mine. And the nature of people is always to be possessive, to acquire, to have more, and to guard what one has. So if we operated purely on intellect, purely on the way our minds think, on logic, we would never give away anything. Because there's no intellectual reason to do so. The intellect says, shali, shali, shalcha, shalcha. Mine is mine and yours is yours, and okay, and that's the way it is. So it's only, the Mefarshim say, it's only the leiv, the heart of the person, that changes this. The leiv as heart is used in Chazal as a contradistinction to moach, to the intellect. Leiv is not intellect, leiv is emotion. Emotion is not intellectual. It's what people feel at an instant. Now, emotion is not long-lasting, whereas intellect can be long-lasting. And not only that, emotion can be used for evil purposes, whereas intellect, if used correctly, is almost always for good things. The Novi will say, Va'ato hashevoso es libom acharonis. You took their emotion and you put it backwards. The emotion became for negative things. So we see that, in popular movements, that's all emotional. Demonstrations can oftentimes be for very evil things. I think the greatest popular demonstrations, certainly the 20th century, were the demonstrations in Germany in the 1930s that the Nazis generated. It had like a hypnotic effect. There's a famous story about a Jewish girl. She wrote it in her memoirs that she wanted to see what the demonstrations were like. And she went to one of the great Nazi rallies, and she herself was so caught up in the emotion that she also went Highland, because that's what emotion does to us. Whereas the intellect is cooler. So on one hand, if we operated only with intellect, there would be no good deeds done in the world. It would be midas dom. I don't have to help you. That's what Stone said. My intellect tells me, I won't have enough money to retire. It's my money. You should have gone to school. 100 good reasons why I don't have to give. Who needs the Mishkan spiritually? I'm good without it. But the heart of the person is different. The heart of the person is emotional, spiritual. It deals not on a rational basis. And therefore, Asher Yidvenu Libo. The heart is what causes you to give. We read in Pirkei Avos that the Talmidim of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai were asked, which are the best traits that a person should have? So one of them said, Leiv Tov, to have a heart that's inclined to do good, because then the person will do good. None of the five said, they said Shochen Tov, they said Ayin Tova. Nobody ever said to have a good mind, to have a high IQ, to have a great intellect. In our world, we put a great deal of store in the intellect, in the mind. Education, how a person has intellectual capacities and qualities. These become the measure of the person. But that's not the measure that Chazal gave here. Chazal said, Leiv Tov, a good heart. Good heart is that he's willing to share with others. His emotion is such that he is able to see beyond himself. The Meforshim say that's the difference, that the intellect is always selfish. It's not selfish in nature, it's just selfish because it cannot identify with anyone else. It's my intellect. It's the way I see things. The Leiv Tov is the fact that the person is able to empathize with others. He's able to see beyond himself. He's able to see a different picture. So we find that in the Judaism, Avraham Avinu is the founder of the Jewish people. The Torah does not tell us about anything about the wisdom of Avraham Avinu. Chazal tell us Shlomo HaMelech was the Chacham Mikol Adam. He has the greatest intellect. Shlomo says it about himself in Koheles. Chacham is greater in knowledge and intellect than anybody that came before me. But Shlomo is not the founder of the Jewish people, even though the Jewish people are an intellectual people. The founder of the Jewish people is the Amud HaChesed, Asher Yidvenu Libo, who empathize with others. So when the Torah describes the Mishkan as being built, the Bezalel and Oholiab were geniuses. There's no question. Lachshov Machshavos, to figure it all out and how to build it, they were geniuses. But the Torah doesn't attribute the Mishkan to that genius. It attributes it to Kol Asher Yidvenu Libo, to the heart of the people, to those who gave voluntarily. Not only that, we'll read in next week's Parsha in Pekudei that Moshe oversubscribed. The people brought more than what he needed. It's so great was their devotion to build the Mishkan. Because again, the concept of the Mishkan is for somebody else, not for me. The Mishkan is for Klal Yisrael. Every day the korbanos are brought for everybody, korban tomid, not for me. And the Mishkan always costs money, starting with the Machzis HaShekel that we read about continually. We read in the Haftorah that wants to be Machazik, the Beis HaMikdash. It always costs, it always is expensive, it always demands from the heart of the people. And that can only be given through an emotion, through a heart. It can't be given intellectually. Intellectually, there is no drive for chesed. The drive for chesed is an inner one. So with the Meforshim discuss whether or not can one create a lev nadiv, a good heart. Is it genetic? Well, a lot of it is genetic by us because we're descended from Avraham Avinu. So there's a certain amount of genetic quality. Yet there are plenty of misers in the Jewish world. There are plenty of people who never give. So can that be developed? So the Bali Musar said that it could be. And that it could be only through habit, through rote. I remember that when I was in the yeshiva long ago, so none of us had money then. We had an allowance, maybe 50 cents a week, 25. Nobody had any money. So they used to pass around the pushka in the morning. So we put in a penny. And I remember it was a big metal pushka and it made a lot of noise. It was like a Purim Grager. So one of us geniuses said to the Mashgiach, to the Rebbe, that we should do away with it. Because it's mafriya in the Chazaras HaShatz, it makes noise. And then we said to him, and what's the difference? Everybody only puts in a penny anyway. What at the end of the day, what did you get? So he said, you don't understand. He said, your hand doesn't want to give. So you have to train it. Like a sportsman. You have to train your legs. You have to train your hands. So every day you have to train it to put your hand in your pocket, to take out the penny and put it in the pushkin. So you do it for 1 year, for 2 years, you do it for the 10 years you're in the yeshiva. So then it becomes easier. So when you have money, you'll also be able to put your hand in the pocket. Then you won't give a penny anymore. But if you never do it, then your hand atrophies. Never has the power to do it. So you can never develop the Lev Tov. So that's why in this week's parsha we see that the Torah emphasizes again that the Mishkan was built out of the divas Lev of Klal Yisrael. Out of the Lev Tov, that became the basis for its sustenance and its holiness. Rabbi Chananya ben Akash, Omer Rotza Kadosh Baruch Hu, L'Zakas Yisrael, L'ficha Chiva Lahem Torah Mitzvot, Shneimad Narcha Beis Man Sikol, Yadil Torah Yadir.